Hello and thank you so much for tuning in to Crest Now. My name is Josh Runkles. I'm very excited about today's show because this particular project has been months in the making. I brought a couple people with me here today to talk about it. It's the 2018 Resident Calendar. I don't know if you've heard of it yet, but we're going to reveal some details here today. So Nadine, Jeff, Stacy, how are you?
Great, thanks for having us.
Good. So we're going to talk about this calendar. I know there is a little buzz going around the community. Some people have been asking questions about it. So we want to clarify some things here. So let's get started right at the beginning. If we go back, I guess 5-6 months ago.
Exactly.
This idea came about. How did that happen, Nadine?
Well, in November, I got an email Catherine Cohen sent to us, and it was just sharing an idea of a community in Germany who had produced a calendar using their residents. So I thought, So I went in on that, and what they used as a theme were very popular movies. And so sure enough, they used the residents. They were costumed. They superimposed backgrounds, and
they had like Dirty
Dancing.
They
had Mary Poppins, and they had the Blues Brothers, and so all kinds of. They had a year's worth of movies reflected with using residents.
Right. And then after you see this, you say, well, Crest has to do this.
Oh,
we have to do
absolutely.
it better. So what is the next step? How do we start that process?
Well, I knew Crest could do it just because I know we had the talent here. And when I say that, I mean we have an amazing group of residents who I think are tons of fun and would like to participate in that. I also knew that between you and Jeff and Stacy, this would be a dynamic team to launch it, because you have to have so many people that are resourceful and talented in so many areas. So then I reached out to all of you, and there was no hesitation, and we got together.
No hesitation that you saw, right?
Excuse me?
So Jeff, when you get that call and Nadine's talking about this calendar, what are your first thoughts about it?
Well, I think it kind of went with what you said. I mean, Crest can do this very well. So you start thinking about what could be the theme of the calendar, because if they did movies, then we would probably have to do something else. And we kind of talked a little bit about, well, maybe TV shows would be a neat topic to do something similar. And you have many years and many TV shows from which to choose. So that kind of made it a nice fit for us.
And I know people are wondering, well, how did you select particular people for particular shows? So I know we had a lot of meetings, and in one of those meetings, we were literally going through lists of people. We were looking at the yearbook of people's pictures to see maybe who fit what character. How did that all come together, Nadine?
Well, we had like at least 75 to 100 shows that we listed, and then we came down to the spanning 50 years, and being able to represent a different generation's worth of people who have watched shows and their favorites. So once we decided on the shows, the 12 shows, then it was looking at, we listed all the casts that we needed for each show. Then we started realizing, using the pictorial directory from 2012, and our backgrounds in terms of who we knew, and literally we had a whole different mindset on how we said hi, and meetings we were having, because now we were thinking, who could be, and who could be that? And so you'll remember we got together a couple times.
Yep.
And
17.
and went back and forth with who we thought might be the people that would be best suited for that character. And I think we really chose a winning cast. We have 47 residents involved.
So with those 47, one of the first things we had to do was get them all on board, right? So how do we do that, Jeff?
Well, we sent them a letter and
said, you're doing this.
Well, we didn't quite do that, but it was an invitation to a wine and cheese party in the garden room. And I think the wine was the key part of that. And on the letter, we wrote in the background in the seal, top secret. We kind of described that we're going to try to do something that's fun, that will happen this summer, that will benefit the Benevolent Care Fund. And that's a key phrase, because everyone here is very generous with their time and their money to help that fund. And so anytime we can do something creative, like Stacy does all the time with the gala and other events, this was a new idea, and Stacy embraced it.
Of
Quite a
course,
bit.
anything to get money for benevolent care, I'm in.
Right,
Exactly.
and that was an idea from meeting number one. Stacy said, how do we do this for the right reason? So how do we determine, that it was benevolent care?
We talked it out, but I mean, that's a fund that really needs the support of the money.
Right.
So, it was just a little addition that we'll be able to get, and we can raise up to $10,000 on this
Wow.
project just for benevolent care. So it really helps to, keep up with the money that's going out that residents use all the time.
Excellent.
And one thing, just to go back a little bit, when we were getting the shows, and you mentioned we did have quite a long list of TV shows. The 12 that we finally picked, and we've kind of referenced this a few times already, that spanned 50 years of television. Well, it just kind of turned out that way.
Right.
The Ed Sullivan Show was first broadcast in 1948, and the last episode of Seinfeld went off the air in 1998. So when we looked at that was just, we kind of knew we had the good bookends, and it was a matter of getting the 10 in between.
A huge component, Josh, was you and the studio, because of the talents that we needed for the photography and for the plan for how we were going to superimpose backgrounds and turn things into different colors and use the expertise of yourself and Mike and Lawrence. So I think, and with Bev and her help and my staff and our help, it really was a team effort with all of our resident family folks, I think,
But before it even gets to the editor, there was a lot of, pre-meetings, there were costumes, try-ons, all kinds of stuff. You met with every one of those residents one-on-one. What is that interaction like for you?
Well, for me, that is a complete joy. And I am very involved in community theater, as you know, and Dundalk Community Theater was more than happy to say, our closets are open for you. So once I knew what shows we were going to have, then I had to meet with all the people and get all their sizes. And they sent me all their sizes, and then I went down to the theater, and we had a blast. The director there, Tom Colonna, and I, who is the managing director of the theater, went through trailers of costumes.
Wow.
And pulled so many. Then you and Jeff remember the rack in your office.
We tried it all on, of course.
And Crest was very generous in letting us store them eventually in the dressing rooms behind the auditorium. So in meeting with the people then, they met with me and I showed them what I had. And they tried them on. And some fit and some did not. A couple made some alterations on their own. I hit Goodwill for some of the things that I knew I needed. My own costume closet.
I was going to say, your own closet,
My own closet.
Attributed to half of the outfits, I believe.
And we pulled it. And the thing is, what really had to make it work was the willingness of everybody to just let us make them and transform them into someone else, even though they kind of looked like a character. One or two costumes we bought. Stacy helped me out with some of the funds we bought. And I also want to make sure I say and attribute so much of the success of it, and that we even did it, to Catherine Cohen, who said yes. She gave us the green light, and then Mark said, you go for it. And so we did. So that was a joy in terms of, but they really didn't realize how much we would get into the authenticity of the costume pieces and makeup and hair. So then I think as people began to talk to one another and feed off of one another, that excitement began to mount.
And I'm impressed that you could go to where all your costumes were, and really with that eye, and say, well, this is might be ideal for this resident or this character, and just we're able to have that natural talent to do that.
And they were spot on. I mean, they truly were. They
a lot of
looked
fun.
awesome.
I appreciate it. When I think of the Bonanza cast, we have you'll see colors that had to blend. Even Ed Sullivan is wearing my dad's tie clip, because they wore tie clasps back then. And so even the sweater hooks came from my mother-in-law's jewelry box. So there's a lot of fun that I feel like I was able to add. But then you have somebody like Elaine Langford, who altered her own costume.
Right.
So.
Yeah, people took it very seriously,
They
and I
did.
think that's what made the difference, is we got the people involved, and they were 100% in from the beginning, and they just ran with it. Like, people were bringing their own costumes in to show us, and we incorporated that into what you already had. So you got to see this early on. You were the first one to kind of see them in costume. What was that like when you saw that Cosmo Kramer, you know, you saw a Ron Brown turn into Cosmo Kramer? Did that tell you right there, hey, we got something here?
I knew we had something, and I knew it was because of the ownership with the cast themselves. They suddenly looked in the mirror, I am Elaine. You know, I am,
Kramer.
gosh, it was
Seinfeld.
Kramer, Seinfeld.
Right.
You know, and in fact, the Musketeers, you had them go out and they all bought their shoes and their socks. And we have just a picture of shoes and their socks and matching socks because people got into details. So the joy that I got from it, that aha moment, was the realization on their part too, this is who I am. And then the willingness then to do what I asked them to do because they trusted. They trusted us.
And we said things like, well, the shoes aren't even going to end up in the picture. That doesn't really matter. But it did matter. Because that's what, they had to be in full costume. They had to exude that character's personality, and that's what really comes across in this calendar.
One gentleman said, yeah, I'm okay, I don't really need makeup. And we said, yeah.
You do.
And he realized that once he saw it. Even that, we had Dana's son, Connor, and we had Robin's daughter, Courtney, helping out with makeup. Debbie Sanford helped out with makeup. My staff helped out. But he came, and I had gotten a lot of makeup cheap from the dollar store. And he said to me, he's a professional makeup artist, and he said, where are the brushes? And I said, in those little packets. And so the next day, he came with his brushes, he came with his palettes, and that added a dimension to the makeup that we didn't count on, you know. So we were, along the way, we discovered things surfaced because of the effort we were making. People bought into it.
And you were both there, I know, for a lot of these shoots. Do you remember any in particular that you just kind of sat back and said, wow, they've really become those characters? Stacy, anybody sticking out?
You know, I think Gilligans Island was one of my favorite ones that they did, besides Ron Brown and Seinfeld, because I can't, like, Kramer is Kramer, you know, and he really pulled that one off.
He walked in like Kramer.
He did.
Yes, yes. But I mean, I can't tell you, each one was so surprising once you saw it come together, and it was like, wow, you know, it was just like all the hair, the makeup, the costumes,
Props.
everything. It just all came together, and they became that TV show.
Jeff, any special moments for you?
Obviously, Ron Brown was
We all
Kramer.
like Kramer, huh?
but for me, it was the Bonanza crew.
Oh, yeah.
And I say that because, you know, part of this, even though they were told, the residents, that you were not going to be saying any words, you weren't going to be acting per se, they really had to become in character. And, you know, you mentioned that they needed the whole outfit to become the character. And then as Nadine helped them, I need this pose, think about this, think about that. You pretend you're in the desert, pretend you're here, or pretend you're there. And they actually had to act a little bit, you know, for these pictures and pose. And, you know, they all did a great job. You know, I think of the big group with MASH or Gilligan's Island. You know, you had some group photos, then you had some individual photos like Mary Tyler Moore.
Carol Evans,
yes,
Mary Tyler Moore.
And Ed Sullivan Show with John Gregory. They all had to do something.
Right, and to me, those singles are sometimes harder because you don't have those other characters to play off of. It's solely on you to become that person.
And they didn't either. They were by themselves. We tried to make that fun with them. And we had the music playing to the shows as they walked in, the theme songs.
So the Cartwright boys, you know, the picture that was finally selected for that in the calendar, as they're kind of I think the one was where they're looking off in the distance. And, you know, you think about it, they were in this TV studio. Right, and you know, Nadine was telling them, look out into the desert distance.
While there's 15 other employees looking right at you.
and their expressions are spot on, like they were actually there. And I think between the magic that you and Lauren and Mike were able to produce as the backgrounds, you know, combined with that whole aura, it's just really makes it work too.
Yeah, I really want people to know that when they come in, and I'm going to show you some pictures here, they're on a green background. They see none of that. So Mike and his Photoshop expertise is taking that later, he's keying all of that green out, and putting a background in that fits and scaling everything. And you're literally, cutting around each person and putting them into that. And it doesn't always blend. That's the editor doing that. So kudos to Mike.
Well,
on
absolutely.
that.
And this example to that is the Munsters. We were missing a person that day. So we had the three characters. We took that shot. And Mr. Leoli came in the next day, who was Grandpa. We made him entirely up that day, had him on the set, took several photos trying to imagine how he would be placed in the shot.
Right.
Mike made that work, placed him in the shot, and you can't tell that he wasn't there that day.
Right.
The day before this all went out, I watched MASH, and I realized that Hawkeye had a red robe.
Right.
So I came in and said, is it possible to make that robe red? And Mike did it. So that was the beauty of that.
Only took 7 hours. It was a piece of cake.
Yeah. I think MASH was another one of my favorite ones, though, because Hal Forrest, what a trooper. I mean, to dress up like a woman, that was a big risk.
I don't know how we've made it this far in the show and not mentioned that Hal Forrest is in a dress.
Right, yeah.
Pretty incredible.
And a hat and pocketbook.
Because there were so many great moments, we can't pinpoint just one.
And all those great moments, we're taking probably 50 pictures of each of these that we're then sorting through and picking which one is really going to encompass that show and will work the best on a calendar.
Exactly.
That doesn't always mean that everybody's looking right at the camera and you see everybody's face. It's more about what is the feel of that show? What makes you look at that image without seeing the actual I Love Lucy or Bonanza? And you just know right off the bat.
That's it.
And I think with each of these images, because everybody came together, we did that. I think you can look at each one and say, oh, that's Bonanza. That's this show. It works.
And to that point, when we revealed the shows at the recruitment Wine and Cheese, I mean, if you think about it, there's so many forms of entertainment now. All over the board that, just staying home and watching TV isn't what it used to be. And in those 50 years that we picked, I mean, TV was a big part of everyone's lives, as, there were just 3 stations and, that was pretty much it, along with radio and other things. And some of the shows like Gilligans Island and the Munsters, as we did the research, were only on for 2 or 3 years, and that was it. But some 50 years later, you still know all the characters. So they really did make a big impact in pop culture and kind of almost American history in some ways. I mean, everyone knows the cast of Gilligan's Island, but why? It was only on for a couple of years in the 60s.
Right.
And we got Leave It to Beaver with John Gantz and the Swopes, and John with freckles and a little hat, and so he's an icon anyway. And then you got Jim West. I think part of what turned out to was that there's residents involved in all backgrounds. There's residents that have been very involved. There's residents that are quiet. There's residents married. There's and split up into different segments. That was fun too.
For me, that might have been the part I didn't expect, was so many mission moments. We talk about mission moments all the time, but there were so many within this project. You talked about Leave It to Beaver and the Swopes. So tell us about. There was something with a little facial hair.
With John Swope.
I want to hear about that story.
Well, he told us that day, which I didn't realize. They were in the makeup room, and he had not shaved his mustache. He's had a mustache since he was 17 years old, and he shaved it that morning to be Ward Cleaver. And I remember when we met to costume, he and his wife Carol, we were meeting and talking, and I said, he didn't have a mustache. And he just looked at me, and she looked at him, and I thought, well, this will be interesting, because maybe now he does. I don't know. So he came in that day, and he had shaved it, and we were on set. And after the picture of the group shot of the family, it was just a special moment where he turned around and kissed her. And that was the first time that she'd ever kissed him without the mustache.
I get chills every
my
time.
My hair stands. That was a beautiful moment.
And there were just so many great moments like that. Well, I think we've tortured people enough. We've shown them a couple images from the calendar. We went behind the scenes. I think they want to know how to get this calendar, and it's coming out soon. So when can they get a copy?
Well, October 18th, in each lobby will be members of our teams plus cast members who are going to be selling the calendar. That's going to launch it that night. The calendar will cost $12 a calendar, and 2 for $20. From then on, They'll be available in the Resident Life Suite, in the offices of the Community Resource Coordinators. That would be Lisa and Rachel, myself. In Philanthropy, their office, the admin office where Serena is, and the TV studio. And then on November 3rd, that's when they have the big Treasure Chest Christmas sale every year. And they have it in Erickson Hall. We will have a station. We'll be camped out. We'll be selling it there as well. So I'm thinking Christmas presents. I'm thinking that with the cast alone, we should sell 1,000. So, you know, that's how we're going to roll it out.
Well, I've got 500 requests already, so we're halfway there, and that's just the family of the cast, so we're good to go. And am I right in assuming that some people will be in costume, right?
Oh, they have the option.
They have the option.
I said,
so it's a possibility.
There's a possibility that you could see Gilligan, or you could see the Musketeers. Or there's a possibility.
And they could have a signed copy of the calendar.
Well,
have
we're
an
thinking
autograph
maybe
or
the
two.
telethon is where we
Right.
auction it off.
Right.
Yes.
That would be special.
Yes.
That would be
yes.
special.
The opportunities are endless.
Yes, they are.
Well, I think everything came together wonderfully. I think we have a great product here. I'm excited to sell it in the next couple weeks. Remember, if you do want to pick up a copy, you can do so on October 18th outside of any lobby. That's from 3:30 until 6 o'clock. And hey, you might just see a character in costume. You might get them to sign your calendar. Who knows? But thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Josh.
And thank you for watching. If you've missed any part of the show, you can watch again at 2, 7, 9, or midnight, or you can catch us on OCRESTTV.com. I do thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.